Canada is one of those places that will fundamentally change the way you see the world. And I am not exaggerating when I say that. Because what I am about to show you over the next few minutes is going to make you question why you have not already booked a flight. Seriously. By the end of this video, you are going to have at least 5 new destinations on your bucket list, and you might just rearrange your entire travel plans for the next year. So let me take you on a journey across the second largest country on planet Earth, a country so vast and so breathtakingly diverse that most people, even Canadians themselves, have only experienced a tiny fraction of what it has to offer. Let us start with something that most people do not realize. Canada has the longest coastline of any country in the world. Let that sink in for a second. If you were to walk along every inch of Canadian coastline, it would take you over 4.5 years, walking nonstop day and night without a single break. That is how enormous this country is. And along those coastlines and deep into the interior, there are landscapes that look like they were pulled straight out of a fantasy novel. We are talking turquoise glacial lakes that glow like they are lit from beneath the surface. Ancient forests where the trees are so tall and so old, they were alive when the Roman Empire was still a thing. Mountains that pierce through clouds and waterfalls that thunder with a force you can feel in your chest from 100 meters away. But here's the thing. Canada is not just about nature. It is about the feeling you get when you are standing in these places. There is a stillness in the Canadian wilderness that you cannot find anywhere else. A quiet so complete that you can hear your own heartbeat. And then, right next door, you have some of the most vibrant, multicultural, exciting cities on Earth. That contrast is what makes Canada truly special. So let me walk you through some of the most awe-inspiring wonders this country holds. And trust me, some of these are going to absolutely blow your mind. We have to begin in the Canadian Rockies. There is simply no other way to start. If you have ever seen a photograph of a perfectly turquoise lake surrounded by snow-capped peaks and thought that it must be digitally enhanced, chances are you were looking at somewhere in the Canadian Rockies. And no, those colors are not fake. They are caused by something called rock flour, which is fine glacial sediment that gets suspended in the water and refracts sunlight in a way that creates those almost supernatural shades of blue and green. Lake Louise is probably the most famous example. Nestled in Banff National Park in Alberta, this lake is one of those rare places on Earth where the reality actually exceeds the photographs. When you stand at the edge of Lake Louise on a calm morning, with the Victoria Glacier reflected perfectly in that impossibly blue water, time just stops. You forget about everything. Your phone, your emails, your deadlines. None of it matters anymore. It is just you and this primordial beauty that has existed for thousands of years and will continue to exist long after we are all gone. But Lake Louise is just the beginning. Just a short drive away, you will find Moraine Lake, which some travelers argue is even more stunning. Situated in the Valley of the 10 Peaks, Moraine Lake has a color that shifts between deep emerald and vivid turquoise, depending on the time of day and the angle of the sunlight. The view from the rock-piled trail above the lake is so iconic that it was once featured on the Canadian $20 bill. When you stand there and look down at that water framed by those 10 ancient peaks, you understand immediately why they put it on the currency. Some things are just that beautiful, and the Rockies do not stop there. Jasper National Park, which sits north of Banff, is actually the largest national park in the Canadian Rockies, and it has a completely different personality. Where Banff can sometimes feel busy and touristy, Jasper retains a rugged, untamed quality. The Columbia Icefield, which straddles the boundary between Banff and Jasper, is one of the largest non-polar ice fields in the world. You can actually walk on the Athabasca Glacier, which is a tongue of ice that extends down from the ice field. Standing on that glacier, you are touching ice that fell as snow hundreds of years ago. There is something deeply humbling about that. Now let me transport you thousands of kilometers east to a place that most international travelers have never even heard of. The Bay of Fundy, located between the provinces of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, is home to the highest tides on the entire planet. We are talking about a tidal range that can reach up to 16 meters. That is roughly the height of a 5-story building. Twice a day, approximately 100 billion tons of water flows in and out of this bay. 100 billion tons. The sheer power of that is almost incomprehensible. What makes the Bay of Fundy truly magical is not just the scale of the tides, but what they have created over millions of years. The relentless force of all that water has carved the coastline into extraordinary formations. At Hopewell Rocks in New Brunswick, you can walk along the ocean floor at low tide among towering rock pillars that have been sculpted by the sea into shapes that look like giant flower pots. These formations stand as tall as 4-story buildings, with trees and vegetation growing on their caps. Then, just hours later, those same formations are almost completely submerged, and you can kayak around their tops. It is like visiting 2 completely different places in a single day. Now let us head north, way north, into a part of Canada that very few people will ever see in person, but that might be the most spectacular of all. The Canadian Arctic is a vast, silent, otherworldly landscape that feels more like another planet than another province. And one of the crown jewels of the Arctic is Nahanni National Park Reserve in the Northwest Territories. The Nahanni River cuts through deep canyons that rival the Grand Canyon in scale, but receive a tiny fraction of the visitors. Virginia Falls, the centerpiece of the park, plunges 90 meters into a massive gorge. That makes it roughly twice the height of Niagara Falls, and yet most people have never heard of it. Imagine standing at the edge of Virginia Falls, with the spray hitting your face and the roar filling your ears, and knowing that you are one of maybe a few thousand people who will visit this place all year. That level of solitude, in the face of such raw, natural power, is something that is increasingly rare in our overcrowded, over-touristed world. Speaking of Niagara Falls, though, we cannot talk about Canadian wonders without giving it its due. Yes, it is one of the most visited tourist attractions on the planet. Yes, it can be crowded and commercial, but there is a reason millions of people come here every single year. When you stand at the brink of Horseshoe Falls on the Canadian side and watch 6 million cubic feet of water per minute cascade over that curved edge into the churning mist below, it does not matter how many souvenir shops are behind you. The raw, overwhelming power of Niagara is something that cannot be diminished by tourism. It hits you on a primal level. Your body actually vibrates from the sound and the force of it, and the Canadian side offers far superior views compared to the American side, which is something that even most Americans will grudgingly admit. Let me now take you to a place that is as far removed from Niagara Falls as you can possibly imagine, while still being in the same country. The Northern Lights. Canada is one of the best places on Earth to witness the aurora borealis, and there are few experiences in life that compare to seeing it for the first time. The best viewing spots are in the Yukon, the Northwest Territories, and northern Manitoba. Churchill, Manitoba, which is already famous for its polar bear population, is one of the premier aurora viewing destinations on the planet. The lights are visible there up to 300 nights per year. When you see the Northern Lights for the first time, something shifts inside you. You're standing in the freezing cold, maybe minus 30 or minus 40 degrees, and you look up, and the entire sky is alive. Curtains of green and purple light ripple and dance across the darkness, shifting and folding like something breathing. It does not look real. Your brain struggles to process what your eyes are seeing because there is no frame of reference for it in everyday life. People cry when they see the aurora for the first time. Grown adults stand there with tears streaming down their faces because it is just that overwhelmingly beautiful. It is one of those moments that reminds you that the universe is far more magnificent than we usually give it credit for. Now let me bring you to the opposite coast. British Columbia, on Canada's Pacific side, is a wonder in its own right. The province contains some of the last remaining old-growth temperate rainforests on Earth. Cathedral Grove on Vancouver Island is home to Douglas fir trees that are over 800 years old. Some of them are more than 70 meters tall and 9 meters in circumference. Walking through Cathedral Grove is like stepping back in time. The forest floor is carpeted in thick moss, ferns unfurl in every direction, and the canopy above you is so dense that only scattered beams of light penetrate through. The air smells ancient. It smells like earth and rain and centuries of slow, patient growth. And then there is the coastline of British Columbia, which is a labyrinth of islands, fjords, and inlets. Haida Gwaii, an archipelago off the northern coast, has been called the Galapagos of the North. This is the ancestral homeland of the Haida people, one of the most artistically accomplished indigenous cultures in human history. The totem poles and longhouse ruins at Escangway, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, are hauntingly beautiful remnants of a civilization that thrived here for thousands of years. Visiting Haida Gwaii feels like visiting a place where the boundary between the human world and the natural world was never drawn in the first place. The culture and the landscape are so intertwined that you cannot separate them. While we are on the West Coast, I have to mention the Sea to Sky Highway, which connects Vancouver to Whistler. This stretch of road is regularly listed among the most scenic drives on the planet. On one side, you have the waters of Howe Sound, one of the southernmost fjords in North America. On the other side, granite cliffs rise dramatically into the sky. And at the end of the road, you arrive in Whistler, which hosted events during the 2010 Winter Olympics and is consistently ranked as one of the top ski resorts in the world. But Whistler is not just a winter destination. In summer, the mountains transform into a paradise for mountain biking, hiking, and ziplining. The peak-to-peak gondola, which spans the distance between Whistler and Blackcomb Mountains, offers views that are genuinely life-changing. Let me shift gears now and talk about something that surprises a lot of people. Canadian cities. Because while the natural wonders get most of the attention, the urban centers of Canada are extraordinary in their own right. Montreal is one of my absolute favorite cities anywhere in the world. It has this incredible energy that blends European sophistication with North American creativity. The cobblestone streets of Old Montreal feel like you have been transported to France, but then you turn a corner and you are surrounded by cutting-edge street art and innovative restaurants that are pushing the boundaries of what food can be. Montreal has been called the cultural capital of Canada, and when you experience its jazz festivals, its comedy scene, its food culture, and its nightlife, you understand why. Toronto is a completely different experience, but equally compelling. It is the most multicultural city in the world. Over half of Toronto's population was born outside of Canada. That diversity translates into neighborhoods that feel like you are traveling the globe without ever leaving the city. You can eat authentic dim sum in Chinatown, grab incredible jerk chicken in Little Jamaica, explore the vibrant colors and flavors of Little India, and finish your evening in the Distillery District, a beautifully restored collection of Victorian-era industrial buildings that now house galleries, boutiques, and some of the best cocktail bars in North America. And then there is Vancouver, which might be the most beautifully situated city on the planet. Where else can you ski in the morning, sail in the afternoon, and have dinner at a world-class restaurant overlooking both mountains and ocean in the evening? Stanley Park alone, a 1,000-acre urban park surrounded by water on 3 sides, would be a headline attraction in any other city. But in Vancouver, it is just one of many reasons the city consistently ranks among the most livable in the world. Let me take you now to a wonder that combines nature and human history in a way that is utterly unique. L'Anse aux Meadows at the northern tip of Newfoundland is the only confirmed Viking settlement in North America. 1,000 years ago, Norse explorers crossed the Atlantic and established a small community here, 500 years before Columbus ever set foot in the Americas. The archaeological site, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site, includes the remains of 8 Norse buildings. Standing among those ruins, looking out at the same coastline that Leif Erikson saw a millennium ago, gives you chills. It rewrites the story of European contact with the Americas and reminds you that history is always more complex and more interesting than the simplified version we learned in school. Newfoundland and Labrador as a whole is one of Canada's most underrated gems. Gros Morne National Park, also a UNESCO World Heritage Site, contains geological formations that were instrumental in proving the theory of plate tectonics. The tablelands area of Gros Morne is essentially a chunk of the Earth's mantle that has been pushed up to the surface. The barren, rust-colored landscape looks like Mars. It is genuinely alien. And then just a few kilometers away, you have Western Brook Pond, a landlocked fjord with sheer cliffs rising 600 meters on either side. The boat tour through Western Brook Pond is one of the most breathtaking experiences available anywhere in Canada. I want to talk about one more natural phenomenon before we start wrapping up, and it is one that I think does not get nearly enough attention. Every autumn, something incredible happens in the skies and forests of Canada, the fall foliage. Now I know what you are thinking. Fall leaves, really? That is your big finale? But hear me out. The scale of autumn color change in Canada is something that defies description. Driving through Quebec, Ontario, or the Maritime provinces in late September and October is like driving through a painting. Entire mountainsides erupt in shades of scarlet, gold, amber, and burnt orange. The sugar maple, which is literally on the Canadian flag, turns a red so intense it almost hurts to look at. Algonquin Provincial Park in Ontario is one of the best places to witness this transformation, and the views from the park's lookout points during peak season are some of the most photographed landscapes in the country. But it is not just about looking at pretty trees. The fall season in Canada carries an emotional weight. There is something about watching an entire landscape transform, knowing that winter is coming, that gives autumn a bittersweet quality. The Japanese have a word for this kind of beauty: mono no aware, the gentle sadness of passing things. Canada in autumn embodies that concept perfectly. It is beauty that is all the more powerful because you know it is temporary. So where does all of this leave us? We have traveled from the turquoise lakes of the Rockies to the thundering tides of the Bay of Fundy. We have stood on ancient glaciers and walked among trees that are older than most countries. We have watched the northern lights paint the sky in impossible colors and explored cities that represent the best of human diversity and creativity. We have visited Viking ruins and Martian landscapes and forests that feel like cathedral sanctuaries. And honestly, we have barely scratched the surface. That is the thing about Canada that gets me every single time. It is so vast, so diverse, so layered with natural beauty and cultural richness that you could spend a lifetime exploring it and still discover something new. There are entire regions we did not even touch on today. The prairies of Saskatchewan, where the sky stretches so wide, it feels infinite. The sand dunes of Athabasca in northern Saskatchewan, which look like they belong in the Sahara. Prince Edward Island, with its red sand beaches and rolling green farmland that inspired Anne of Green Gables. The ice caves of Abraham Lake in Alberta, where frozen methane bubbles create an otherworldly pattern beneath the surface. The Thousand Islands region of Ontario. The fjords of Baffin Island. The list truly never ends.